So I'm no stranger to poverty. Especially after my parents got divorced, me and my mom really struggled financially. I remember at the time one of the biggest, or the two biggest things that we struggled with was getting enough income and finding affordable housing. I would say even now, me and Beth still struggle with finding affordable housing in a range that we can really do. So when I found out that Martin Luther King's Poor People's Campaign focused on a sustainable income and affordable housing, I was all on board. The Poor People's Campaign was somewhat of the second wave of the civil rights movement. Martin Luther King had realized that just because people are given the same opportunities doesn't mean that they can afford to show up for them. So the Poor People's Campaign was somewhat that second wave to come up and clean up what was left over injustice from the original civil rights movement. The campaign focused on helping the poor by large demonstrations of poverty at the U.S. Capitol, all minorities together under the sort of umbrella of hardship, and also proposing a plan to start a solution towards those problems. The campaign asked of the federal government to help with jobs, to ensure a basic living salary for everyone, and finally to provide more low-income housing, which is the thing that I really focus on. As I've been learning about the Poor People's Campaign, I've been just really inspired by what went down, and it's really brought to light to me three main things that I've learned in particular from studying about the Poor People's Campaign. So I want to talk about those today. What's up everybody, it's Charlie and I'm back. So the first thing I learned from the Poor People's Campaign is that poverty really does affect everyone. There's not any race or minority or majority or gender or non-gender that doesn't have poverty that impacts that group in some way or another. Of course, we also know that poverty does not affect all groups equally. Native Americans, Black people, Hispanic people have pretty much double the poverty rates of white and Asian people. So we know that it's not equal, but we also know that it does affect everyone. And so I like that MLK sort of rallied around this one thing that was so central to so many people's lives. It makes me want to keep that focus today. I've had the honor to work with a lot of really good nonprofits, and I love groups like Southerners on New Ground who focus on all of the different minorities that are affected. Let that be transgender people or people with disabilities. They all have the same unifying factor of poverty. And so I like organizations that keep that as its root, like Habitat for Humanity, who focus on affordable housing for all different minority groups who are under this umbrella of poverty. The second thing I learned from the Poor People's Movement was that the government's reaction to minorities, especially Black and brown people gathering, has always been overly militant. During the Poor People's Campaign, they had these large demonstrations of poor people coming to the state capitol or to the country's capital and showing that we are here and that we are united and that we do need help, so that people could see the magnitude of poverty in the United States. And the reaction was just like what happened for the Black Lives Matter protests last year. People responded with an overly militant force that didn't need to happen. And that same thing happened for the Poor People's Movement. When they came out, the National Guard was out and they were treating it like it was going to be an insurrection, which we now know they're not prepared when actual insurrection happens. But it's just wild the way that institutional racism has affected our governing systems and the way that we take care of each other and provide safety in our communities and for our country as a whole. And I just hate to see that kind of overly militant response when people come with peacefulness and with the desire to just be seen and known and loved and encouraged to live into their purpose. And the last thing that I learned from the Poor People's Campaign is that nonviolence is always going to lead to better results than violence. I know this is something that I say all the time, but nonviolence is really the philosophy that I believe in, and why I back Martin Luther King's movement so strongly, because nonviolence was the way that they got things done. Because there's always going to be criticizers, there's always going to be haters who think that you're doing the wrong thing by getting out there and standing up and making your voice be heard. And so you want to make sure that there's not any barriers to people processing what you're trying to say. And so I know that nonviolence is a way that you can peacefully show up and say what you have to say, and have people, even if they don't listen to you, they still respect you for standing by your morals. And so that's what I want to be about. And I think it's so cool the way the Poor People's Movement has demonstrated that for us back then, and the ways we can take that into the way we demonstrate and the way we try to get our voices out now. So yeah, I'd love to hear what you guys think. I'll see you in the comments. Like and subscribe to see more, and I'll see you next week. Deuce.